I hope to find everybody doing good. It's started cooling off down here. We started getting cold. The past 2 nights I've had to turn the heat on throughout the night. So it's getting a little cooler for us, but we still don't have a frost yet. It's actually supposed to warm back up later in the week, or this weekend, by this weekend. So you never know. This time of year, it's take a sweater with you wherever you go, because you never know what it's going to feel like. But today I want to do the mincemeat pie. And this pie to me is super interesting. This is another one that I don't think I've ever ate before. I say I don't think I have because I do remember times with both of my grandmothers of having different things and not necessarily as a child realizing what I was eating. So I don't feel like I've ever had this before as far as I know. Now, in looking, I have came across so many different versions of the recipe for this, and I've decided, and I'm bad to do this, so if it don't turn out good, it'll be my fault. I'm just kind of going to go by the different recipes I have found and put together what I feel like would satisfy our taste buds. So bear with me on that, and if you don't like this recipe, there's a ton of others out there for you to look at. But this is what I'm doing because there's so many of them called for so much spices. The spices just to me seemed like it was going to be overbearing in the spice area. So I just kind of tweaked it to my liking. But anyway, it's really interesting the history I have found out about this pie, and I really want to try to share that with you right quick before I get into the actual recipe. One of the things I found out, and there's more than even what I found out, but there's so many different theories on this pie too, that just like the spice deal, the recipe itself is so many different vast things. The ideas of its original time period is also that way, because in this particular thing here it says in 1390 they have found documents where a certain type of cookbook, which was on a scroll type in 1390, named this pie a tarts of flesh, and it consisted of, at that time, it consisted of ground pork, hard-boiled eggs, cheese, and then a bunch of different spices and so on. So the hard-boiled eggs just didn't sound right to me at all when it comes to this. I said, nope, I ain't doing that one. And 1615, and I know I won't pronounce these names right, Gervais Markham's The English Housewife, which was a cookbook back in 1615. And it entailed having a leg of a mutton and 3 pounds of suet. Which I'm thinking 3 pounds of suet, that's a lot of animal fat to me. So I can't imagine what that one would be. And it consisted, like I said, of all the different spices and the raisins and currants and figs and different things like that. Now for my recipe, there's one thing that I wish I had, and I didn't realize this until after I'd already got my ingredients. But some of the recipes called for figs, but some of them don't. I would have put figs in this if I'd had figs, because I do like figs and stuff like this. And this one is actually one of my favorite ones. In the 17th century, there was connection made with this pie and Christmas. And how they came about that is their mince meat consisted of lamb, which represented Christ, the lamb that was slain. And then they made them in an oblong shape, which represented the manger that Jesus laid in whenever he was born. And the either the topping of the pie crust or the whipped cream, either one, the way they talked, could be considered the swaddling cloves as Jesus laid in the manger. So I like that. So to me that was really interesting, and I like that idea, and that's how it's connected to the idea of Christmas in itself too. So I thought that was really interesting. I am going to read off what I am adding to this pie to you as I go here. And I've got apples that I have gotten from my dad that I just cut up and everything, and I froze. And I'm going to be cutting up a cup of these apples. Right now they're cut up in bigger pieces like I would make for a apple pie. So I'm going to cut up a cup's worth of these into smaller pieces. Okay guys, here I cut up my apples into smaller chunks. And this here, I have 3 quarter cups, which would make 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. And then I add the apples, 1 cup of apples. My apples are still frozen, so that's why they look like they do right there. Then we're going to add to this 1 cup of raisins, and this is approximately a cup of raisins. I'm just going to throw them all in there. I didn't even measure those out. And then I'm going to add 1 cup of currants. Before I add those currants, I want to go ahead and put this, well, yeah, I'll put this in there. This, it calls for 1/3 cup of brandy. If you don't use any type of brandy or anything like that, which I don't so much mind for cooking with stuff like that. I'm not a drinker necessarily, but I don't mind to do it with cooking. But you can use apple juice, which is what I'm using, and this is 1/3 cup of apple juice. And then I'm going to do 1 cup of currants. I'm sorry, things are sticking together down in there. Okay. So these were currants, and I found those. Some of those might be hard to find unless you have your own currants, but I found those in the grocery store. So we do have currants in the grocery store like that. Go ahead and mix that up just a tad. Get my recipe out here. Now I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. Okay, here is what I'm adding as in my spices. And also, before I forget to tell you, it also said when it was talking about the pie representing the gifts, or whenever Christ came and was laying in the manger, the cinnamon, the cloves, and the nutmeg was to represent the 3 gifts that the wise men brought. So that was something else that I had read concerning why this pie was considered a Christmas pie. Now, for my spices, and this, like I said, was different with so many different recipes that I just kind of tweaked it to my liking, because it called for bunches of, I mean, like twice this amount of spices. And I just really felt like it actually even called for a whole teaspoon of cloves, and I couldn't imagine putting a whole teaspoon of cloves in a pie. That just sounds like it'd be way overbearing to me. So in mine, I have got a 1/4 teaspoon of cloves. This here we have ginger. I've got a 1/2 teaspoon of ginger, a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, and a whole teaspoon of cinnamon. That's what I'm adding to mine. And it didn't call for any salt, and I don't really think I've seen salt in any of these recipes. But I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. You can add a 1/4 I just think with all of this sweetness and the way that salt marries all the flavors together, I just felt like it needed a little bit of salt. So this is a 1/4 teaspoon. You might get by with even just an 1/8. But that's what I'm adding to mine for this recipe. And that's just by preference, like I said. Now I'm going to be adding a zest of a orange. And there was differences in this too with that. And I'm adding 1 large egg. And then, in different recipes, done this different as well. I have It calls, most of them called for half a cup of ground, and I'm making a mess, of ground meat or suet. Some of them didn't even have the meat. But I've got ground beef here. Some call for ground lamb, some call for ground pork. Some just call for different types, and I've mashed that up real good so it would blend in good. Now I've got my pre-baked crust over here, which I probably could have just cooked my crust halfway. I also seen where some people put nuts in this. I think it would be good with nuts in it. Most of them called for almonds. I would probably put pecans if it were me, but that's me. I like the idea that I can make this pie into what I want to make it out of too. So I'm going to put this in my crust. Let me get your crust over here so you can see what I'm doing here. It's a simple pie to throw together. Very simple pie. This here is a deep dish. A lot of them made lattice tops and such. I'm not, just because I had already bought this pie crust and got it ready for this. And I'm just going to use it for like a scoop of ice cream. I'm going to keep this pie and eat it. So we're going to scoop it up with some ice cream and eat it that way, because I think it's like kind of like an apple pie. It would be really good with that. So I'm going to put this in a 400-degree oven. It said, most recipes said between 50 minutes to an hour. So we're going to put this in the oven and we'll get back whenever it gets done. Also with this, I'm sorry I didn't mention this. When you do your hamburger meat, you can put, I left the grease from that hamburger in that meat, because usually most of them calls for some type of suet. And my idea for that would be about 3 tablespoons. Because some things called for, like, you could just substitute it for 3 tablespoons of butter, or the fat from the meat, or the fat itself without the meat, and without the meat, just the butter. So you can kind of substitute that the way you want to substitute that as well, in my opinion. I didn't add it just because I just left the meat itself, the grease that was within the meat. Okay, guys, I thought I'd tell you, because some people may end up asking. Suet is what they would use to cut away from the fat they cut away from. It's saturated fat that they would cut away from the organs of animals whenever they butcher animals, and they'd melt it down and, get rid of the impurities, just like we would if we were making lard and stuff like that. It's basically the same type of thing, but it specifically came from around the organs. And mutin, which is M-U-T-T-O-N, is what it is it's lamb. It's the type of meat that came from lamb. So when I said mutin in that one recipe that it called for, that's what it was referring to. So I wanted to clarify that before anybody may be wondering about it. Alright guys, I cut my pie. I made some vanilla ice cream on there. Time to taste. It smells really good. You can really smell the orange. I'm surprised no more rind than I put in there. I really smell the orange rind. Yes, yes, yes. I really like this. I do. I really like this, guys. This is really good. I want some pecans. Next time I do this, I'm going to put some pecans in it. I may make this for Christmas, especially since I learned about that last part of Christ and his birth. I'll probably do this for Christmas. I may even get some ground lamb. We have several people around here that raise lamb. I may do that. I like it a lot. I don't think I'd change anything concerning the amount of spices that I used for me. That's something you can tweak yourself. But yeah, mincemeat pie, guys. Really good. I'm proud of it. I am. I'm very proud of that. Very good. Okay. So now, I want to go ahead and tag some more folks. And I should have went ahead and tagged everybody last week like Lori did and Vicky did, but I don't know. I wasn't thinking, I reckon. But anyway, I want to go ahead and bring forth the rest of my folks that I want to tag. And one lady, Miss Granny B, some of you may be familiar with Miss Granny. She is the super sweet little lady I ever met. And she does a lot of good old-fashioned recipes. She's down-to-earth Southern girl, born and bred. She lives down in Arkansas, and her husband Bruce. And she's already got some great recipes going on. And so I've invited her to this collaboration. I'm going to put their links to all these that I mentioned down below. And then whenever they do their pie for the challenge, I will add it to the playlist just as I've added everybody else that's done pies from from the ones Lori picked as well as the ones Vicky picked. I'm adding them to the playlist as they go, and I think they've got their own playlist. I know Lori's got her own playlist that she's adding them to as well. Second of all, I want to add Miss Darlene and Chris and Darlene actually from Homesteading the Hard Way. They are super down-to-earth folks. They're in North Carolina. They're farmers. He's a farmer and a small farm. He has a small farm, and she's a school teacher. And all of these folks, too, I respect a great deal for the work that they do and how they bring what they bring to the table concerning, they all have hearts to want to keep things alive when it comes to the way they were raised and the way they produce life and bring things in. I can't find the words I'm trying to say. They just have a heart a lot like I have when it comes to wanting to preserve things of old skills and stuff like that. They know how to work and they know how to work hard. And so I want to add Darlene and Chris to this collaboration as well, and I encourage you to go check out their channel. And then last but definitely not least is Miss Jeanette at Neal's Homestead. I love Miss Jeanette. I could sit and watch her videos all day long, just about as bad as I am with Lori when it comes to, I appreciate the life they live and how they live their life, and it just blesses me. Jeanette, she was raised, well, she lives, her life now is lived a lot like I have grown up and try to bring forward into my own kids' life and grandkids' lives. She's a super great grandmother. They do so many different things on their little homestead. Well, they got a decent sized homestead. And one of the things that I really love to glean from Miss Jeanette is they have a greenhouse. Well, they have several greenhouses actually. And you know, some of you may know that's part of our vision for our property and stuff on our farm is to be able to farm and produce things better. They have a pond. She loves to fish. She loves bluegill, which is one of my favorite things to eat is bluegill. I'd rather have bluegill as catfish or anything else. And but I love her channel. I love the wisdom that she has. She brings a lot of wisdom to the table, just like Miss Lori and Vicky does. So I really encourage you to go check her out as well. But all these ladies have their own set of wisdom in the life that they live, and I appreciate their wisdom. I want to honor them. And in honoring them, I want to ask them to be a part of this collaboration because I appreciate their hearts. I appreciate who they are in life. And I hope you're really getting something out of this playlist and even these folks that we're introducing you to, because Lori and Vicky has introduced you to some great people as well. And I'm just blessed to get to even know some of these folks a little better. And it's just encouraging and it's an honor to be able to do that. Anyway, I appreciate you guys a great deal. I hope you enjoyed this recipe, and I encourage you to give it a try. I really liked it. I'm tickled with it, very tickled with it. And I'll put what I did in the description below as for the ingredient amount, and you can judge it from that, but I guess you know, you just have to figure it out for yourself. But I really like the amount of things I put in there. But I would add some pecans, and I think the figs would be really good in it too. And if I did the figs, I would put probably half a cup. And if I did the pecans, I'd probably use about half a cup as well. So there it goes. Anyway, God bless you guys. I appreciate you so much. Thank you. See you next time. Mr. Brown, this would be really good with some ground deer meat, ground venison. So, catch us a deer this year. So Lord can make you a mincemeat pie with ground deer meat. See you guys.